Welcome back to the Voices of Business, a Santa Clarita Valley Chamber of Commerce podcast. It's good to be with you. I'm your host, Joshua Maddux. My co-host, Corey Nathan, is off on... Oh, wait, Corey, you're here today.
I am. I've been persona non grata the last few episodes, but I appreciate you bearing with me, Joshua. It's good to see you, man.
It's good to have you on. This is where we talk about business in the Santa Clarita Valley, all over the country, and in our own backyards here. But a lot of what we talk about is with business owners and leaders that are in our own community. And I'm super excited to have this conversation today with Jennifer Abbott and Andrew Aston from the Human Element Company. Good to have you guys on.
Thanks for having us.
Good to be on. Thank you.
Awesome. So I think the first thing out of the gate here is, Andrew, your title is Founder and Chief People Officer. What does a Chief People Officer do?
The summation of a chief people officer is, you could change it with chief bottle washer, chief dishwasher. It pretty much means if something needs to get done by a human, I'll throw myself into the chasm, or whatever needs to get done, I throw it in. So it pretty much, if there's an issue or a challenge, I'm going to be the spirit to attacking that usually.
So founder and intern. Got it.
Founder/intern would probably be a better description.
I love that. Yeah, just interchange that with anything. And then Jennifer, yourself, so you are the fractional CHRO and HR consultant over at the Human Element Company. CHRO. We've had a lot of guests with fun acronyms. What does that one stand for?
It's a Chief Human Resources Officer. And so our company is a staffing and HR company. And the inception of that was that it was always staffing. And then when you have a staffing company, you have a lot of employees on payroll that come on and off and on and off. And so I got very, very good at the HR part. And then people just started asking us, hey, can you do what you do for your company for us? So it morphed into human resources. So we do staffing and HR. So I'm over the HR and Andrew's over the staffing, which is the people part of it. But we're all people. We would do all the people stuff.
Got it. So obviously you guys run the Human Element Company, like you said, staffing, HR, based in Santa Clarita. Are most of your guys' clients here locally, or is it sort of all over the place?
So we do have close clients coast to coast. So we help clients from New York to San Francisco to San Diego. But we do have a large contingent of clients in Santa Clarita and the Los Angeles County area. Jen could speak more to the HR clients, which I think are mainly based out of Los Angeles.
Yeah, so staffing is something that can obviously be done completely remote. We meet with every person naturally. But HR, what I do with HR is definitely more of the human touch in the company. So I try to work with companies that are commutable. The furthest one I have is in Irvine, but a lot in Santa Clarita, yes. And if not Santa Clarita, the Valley, Los Angeles, Orange County. But realistically, most of the contacts are from Santa Clarita.
Well, I imagine that's partly due to the fact that you guys are chamber members, you're at events, you're at the expo and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So, well, and I know like HR laws change so much state to state, and, a little bit harder to probably keep up on, California's is hard enough to keep up on. You start throwing other states and counties and districts and all that in there, and good luck.
The good news is that California is probably the most stringent. So if you follow California, you're usually in a pretty good spot.
Yeah. Use that as the rule of thumb.
Jennifer, Andrew, I noticed that you both have Toronto somewhere in your background. Is that where you're both from?
Yes.
Go ahead,
yes.
Jen.
Yes. So I am a born American. My parents were on a transfer here in the 70s, and I was born in New York when my dad worked on Wall Street. And then we were moved all over the U.S., and then tragedy, unfortunately, happened to our family, and we were moved back to Canada, where I was 3 years of age and raised, and that is where I met Andrew. And the big joke is at our wedding, he stood up and said, "I'm only marrying her because she's American." And we all laughed and thought that was so funny. And 25 years later, here we are. We've been here for 22 years, I think, 23 years, maybe
Yeah.
24 years, but we've been here a
23.
long time. A year after we got married. So joke's on me, I guess, in the end.
Did you come directly to Santa Clarita?
Go ahead, Andrew.
So no, we eventually we moved initially to Pasadena for our arrival, and then we ended up spending a little time in Los Feliz, like I think everybody who comes to LA does. It's Los Feliz or Silver Lake, and then we got serious about having a family, moved to Arcadia, and we were in Arcadia for almost 10 years before we moved to Santa Clarita.
Oh, wow. What drew you to Southern California? Were there business opportunities out here?
Can I run with this one, Dan?
Sure.
It's a good story. Jen and I, well, we did a favor for a family friend who happens to work for the airlines. And because we helped out their family, they gave us 2 travel passes to anywhere in the world, but we had to use it before we were given like 3 months because the credit was going to go away. So we decided to visit a friend in Southern California. And it was probably in January or February. And it was like -14 in Toronto. We had a house. We both had careers. We didn't have kids. And we came down and there were Santa Ana's and it was 78 degrees. And we're at the Cheesecake Factory in Marina Del Rey. And you can imagine the conversation that happened at that over,
It was
lunch.
me. I was the problem. I looked at him. I was like, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's move here. And we went home, packed up, got all his visas organized, packed up, and drove across the country in our 20s. And here we are.
Yeah.
Wow. That's funny. So, things like the Rose Parade and stuff, and, when they do that and it's, 75, watching that actually drives people here.
Absolutely. That's why people pay the weather tax every year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a business tax.
That's crazy. Yeah, there's plenty of those. So obviously looking at like the HR and the hiring side of the business, like what got you guys into the talent acquisition field, HR, all of that?
Well, Jen, why don't you start with your background is a lot more interesting than mine in
Colorful.
staffing.
So Andrew's been in
Yeah.
staffing since the beginning of time. And he's worked for many companies and then decided to go out on his own. I, on the other hand, have a more colorful background in the sense that I actually graduated from Ryerson in Toronto with in dance was my major. And I came to the States. When I came to the States thinking I could teach here, it didn't work out that way. But the good news is the first night that I landed here, I met an executive at USC and was hired the next day at USC. And I worked there for 10 years and worked through auxiliary services. And then I had 3 children under the age of 5. So I stepped away from USC because the commute from Arcadia to USC was a lot with 3 children under the age of 5. And Andrew had already had a very successful staffing company at this point. And then he exited that staffing company and started his own. And that's where I got involved in all of the HR part of it. And then I decided to really jump in. I went and got certified. I'm an SCP certification with SHRM. And that's how I got into all of that. So I haven't been in it as long as he has. And like I said earlier, when Andrew had clients and, they would come up and say, hey, can Jen do what she does for your company for my company? And that's how this evolved into now it's word of mouth. But so I definitely have a colorful background coming into this. Andrew's is a little more boring. I'm sure he can tell you, but he's been in staffing since the beginning of time.
Yeah, I started just Y2K, so it's 25 years now. And my story is I went to go interview for a company that in Canada, there's 4 national banks. And I was in banking, online banking, and I got to meet the owner, and they said, this is what we do. We sell these applications built on Visual Basic. for financial institutions. And I said, what's that group over there that look like really cool people? And they said, that's our staffing division. And I said, well, can I talk to them? And that's how I got my start. And I've been doing it ever since. So it is really quite boring.
That's the career trajectory. Saw a group of cool people and been doing it since.
That was it.
Yeah, and my brother also owns an agency in Canada. And my sister-in-law works for a massive global company in talent acquisition. So it is in the DNA in our family.
Nice. So, been in talent acquisition, Andrew, for, a long time. What led you to sort of founding or starting your own business? What led you to that shift?
I think the dynamic shift came from being able to kind of direct things. I always tell the story when we onboard our employees, and this goes to kind of the heart of who we are. We pay our contract employees a day early. We pay on Thursday. And one of the reasons we do that is I worked as a director for another company, and the owners happened to be traveling in France, and they had an issue with their finances or banks. And so I get a message Friday morning that I have to let 47 contractors know that they're not getting paid that day on a Friday. And it was a horrific experience. Imagine calling people saying, hey, listen, there's been an issue with the bank. We can't get your check out until Monday. So that was one of the big kind of key things that happened to me doing this job was like, if I'm ever a founder at C-suite or starting a company, let's pay a day early because I want to make sure that even if we have a challenge with the banks or there's an IT outage or anything that happens, it still gives us a day to recover to make sure that person's paid. Because my assumption being an immigrant to this country where you're paid weekly and you're trying to pay your rent and your bills and things are tight is that people live check to check. So that was one of the big things for us as the human element company. Could we hold on to it another day? Yeah, it wouldn't make more sense, interest, all of that stuff. But the human piece says, if there's an issue, we still have time. We still have 24 hours to recover to get that person a live check or get those funds direct deposited. And knock on wood, it has happened, but we've never had it go past a Friday. So my gut was telling me that was one of the considerations when, it was like, what am I doing working for a big company where everyone's a widget? Or do I want to be part of a company that everybody is a human being and is treated that way, if that makes sense?
It seems so like backwards to have that statement of like treating people like humans when it's human, like hiring and human resources. And
you'd be surprised though.
No, that's why I'm saying that, because human resources 9 times out of 10 is like files and numbers and does it meet this quota or does it meet this statistic, and if it doesn't, then that number is no longer in that file cabinet, it's in a different file cabinet, which means someone just lost their job.
And that's the thing that's different. Actually, HR consultants typically don't work with the employees of companies. They'll guide the C-suite or they'll guide the managers. And a fractional HR director gets to work with the employees. So I meet everybody at every company that I work with. They can call, they can text, they can email, they can bounce things off of me. So that's where like my human element is very different than just a consultant that goes in. And Andrew and I really get to know all of our candidates, all of our clients, all of the employees. It's really, really important to us. And then we attract amazing companies and amazing clients, and the longevity pays off amazingly when it's done.
Yeah.
Jennifer. Sorry. Go ahead, Josh.
Go for it.
No, I was curious, when you're interviewing potential candidates, what do you find are the order of priorities of what they're looking for a next chapter in their career? Is it about the money? Is it about the benefits? Is it about the location? Maybe some combination of those things? Or are there more pressing priorities that you find your candidates are looking for, as a higher order?
So Andrew's the one who deals with the candidates. I deal with employees. So that's a great question, Corey, because when I first meet employees, I do kind of a SWOT analysis, and I ask them their 5 to 10-year plan, what drives them at the company, what makes them come every day, do they want to stay with the company? And I'm going to say 99 times out of 100, the employees that are at the companies currently, Andrew's dealing with candidates that aren't there yet. It is culture, 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 culture. Naturally, we need money to pay the bills, and there's this big debate in the HR world. Is it really about the salary? And you have different generations that will say yes and no. But in my experience, and certainly right now, culture. There is also, and Andrew can speak to this more than I can. We're really still dealing with this like RTO, return to office, hybrid, work from home. That seems to be in most companies right now. It's still a very big subject, whether the employees like it or not, or whether they love it. And that's part of that culture, that they love the flexibility of that. But Andrew, as far as candidates go, what would you say, Andrew?
Well, I will tell you, speaking with candidates on a daily, 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, 5 days, 6 days a week for the last 25 years, I would say the top 3, to reinforce what Jen says for internal employees, is my first question in LA is literally, because of RTO, is the commute. It's not salary. It's where do you live, where's the job, and is it on site? So that has become the priority when we're discussing with candidates about opportunities, is what does that commute look like? And is that 5 days a week in the office? First question. The second question usually is going to come down to contract, the hourly rate, and the salary range. Is that going to be, sustainable for them to keep the lights on? And then number 3 right away is the culture of the organization. What are the people like? What is the company doing? And is it something that I have a runway for a career? So to validate what Jen says, it's in the top 3 for sure of candidates applying. And then obviously it makes sense once you're working that the number 1 thing is the culture. It shifts, it morphs, right? Because you've accepted the job, the commute's acceptable, the salary's acceptable, there's a runway. So the number 1 driving factor of that person staying is going to be the people and the culture.
So I want to pick up on that for a second for both candidates as well as companies. I noticed that a number of companies pay a lot of lip service to culture. Oh, we're all about the culture. But I don't know if you've experienced this, but I walk into a lot of different companies, and there are some companies where you can feel a difference. You'll sit down with the head of the company and they'll talk about culture, but you just walk through their hallways and it feels, I don't know, like a hospital at best. There are other companies, not that a hospital is a terrible place to work, but there's a certain feel to it that's very, cold, I guess you could say, and antiseptic.
Sterile.
Yeah, sterile is a good word for it. There are other companies when you walk in and it's almost like walking into a mist, and you can tell whether it's a conversation that 2 people are having in the hallway about a project that they're working on, or the bullpen, if there is one, how people are, even the way people are sitting at their desk, if they're in the office, there's just something, like I said, like a mist that you can feel that people genuinely enjoy where they're spending and with whom they're spending a majority of their waking hours. What do you think those different? First of all, do you agree, and have you experienced those differences as well? Second of all, what do you think those differences are made of?
I'm going to take this first, Andrew. Wait, let me take this first, because mine's so different than yours, I'm betting. So when I'm hired, Corey, I'm hired because the owners, the principals, care deeply about their organization and their people. They want me to get under the hood. They want me to know if their employees are happy. They want to know if they're compliant. So my clients, I'm going to tell you, more than 99% of the time, have the most fantastic culture. So I get to go into all my companies are amazing because they don't want to hire me if they're not. And their employees love it because they have somebody to talk to. And, we've had instances where I'm so happy you're here. It just shows that the company loves us so much and cares. And so I get the pleasure of working with amazing cultures all the time. Andrew, on the other hand, has probably more of a mix because they're staffing, which is so different than when I'm coming in to nurture a workforce. Go ahead, Andrew. Sorry.
Yeah. So I agree with you, Corey, 100%. There's a je ne sais quoi when you walk into an office and people look at you and smile and get up from their desk and be like, "Oh, can I help you? Did you need a coffee or a water?" Like, it's natural. You could feel it right away, the energy. You can't quantify, you can't put a quotient on it, but it's there because people are like, "Oh, who's this stranger in the office? I want to say hello." And they feel comfortable and confident to get up and engage you. The offices that are scarier is when you walk in and there's silence and everybody's kind of glinting at you like, "Who's this coming in?" And those are the kind of key indicators that we're like, "Oh boy, here we go. Why?" Now I wonder why they're hiring people. And those are the companies that, like, when we go visit them, you could pick up on that right away. We are very, very lucky and fortunate that a lot of our business comes from referrals. So the top 20% tends to affiliate with the top 20%, which tends to refer those top 20%. And as Jen says, if a company is looking to better their culture, increase their growth, and it's just not an HR number like, I need 6 more developers to get this project done on this time and then they're done, you could really pick up on that when you walk through and you meet the executive team. It's clear as day. So, and there's no way to put a feeling on it, or one person, or like this leader does this or does it this way, because there's so many different companies that have different cultures that have that feeling, and the difference and diversity of their leaders is amazing, but it has that feeling. Like you said, it's like a mist you walk in where people are happy to be there, and that, they see you in the hallway and they're like, "Oh, you're going to the bathroom," and 3 people on the way down the hallway are like, "Do you need something? Can I help you?" Like, they're looking to help out, where other companies are like in their cubicles with their blinders on, their headsets, and not making eye contact. You're like, "Oh boy, here we go."
Yeah, and it's the same for when I walk into companies, Andrew, because I'll visit companies usually twice a month. I try and get into the office to see everybody, and I don't get the, "Oh my God, HR's here. Somebody's getting fired," or I get the biggest reception always, which is amazing. And to the point that actually last week I was at a company in Pasadena, and we were a little disruptive in that office, and it interrupted a Zoom. And I was like, I'm not normally, welcomed with such loudness, and, "Oh my God, John, we haven't seen you, and welcome." So, I really, really get a good HR vibe, which sometimes, I would imagine consultants go in and they get the bad vibe. But again, that goes back to the cultures and the companies that Andrew and I get to work with, because their leaders have chosen us, which is really, it's really the human side of it, and it's really cool to play into the human side of it.
That's cool. Yeah, I imagine normally when a business hires an HR consultant to come in and start having conversations, it's not a good thing. At least that's, typically how it's perceived.
Right.
Yeah, so that's good. So you guys touched a little bit on sort of the back to office, remote work, like a lot of those sort of, you touched on that element. I imagine that has changed fairly substantially over the past 4 or 5 years. How much of that shift have you guys seen in the sense of businesses who are let's say a Santa Clarita based business that has an office in Santa Clarita, and in 2019, all they wanted was Santa Clarita talent plus 10 miles, where now maybe they closed the office or downsized and their team is distributed? Or what does that change look like? How have you guys seen that affect both the hiring and then also sort of the HR and that element?
Well, I'll take the hiring piece first. What we're seeing for local businesses is they are doing RTO, return to office. They want that personal touch and those relationship and team building and culture building. Obviously, everybody was impacted, right? Everybody went remote. Everybody did what they could to get through that piece. And I feel that the clients that I'm working with now is, it's back on site. We got to have people here to greet our customers, to be on the phone, to team build, to go for lunches, to go for happy hours. So, and I'm seeing that both with the local businesses and my larger enterprise companies that are across outside of Santa Clarita. The mantra is return to office, team building, feet on the ground. Now, they may have the ability to handle remote, but it's still, hey, you're going to be in the office this amount of times per month for team building. That's what I'm seeing from a hiring perspective.
Yeah.
Got it.
My clients are definitely a mix. I have some that are completely remote, some that are hybrid, some that are all in office and back to office. RTO is definitely over the nation a trend right now. I think that companies, and this is just my opinion, this isn't on data, but I think the companies that have an RTO and either allow some sort of hybrid, or what I'm really finding is what the employees are wanting is the special circumstances. So knowing that people have worked from home. So if their washing machine is broken, or, and I'm not making this up, guys, like it's everything, or they're getting furniture delivered, or, and I know this doesn't sound like a priority at work, and it's not for the business, but when we talk about that culture and some of the companies that are like, yeah, we're going to let you have special circumstances. We are RTO, but you know what? If you need your bed delivered and you have to be there for the delivery person, they can only do it Monday through Friday, or God forbid your animal's sick and you can only get into the vet, on this day. That's where that culture is really playing into effect with the RTO. I think, and this is just, like I said, my opinion, and what I'm seeing right now is those who are RTO and it's completely, you're in 100%. There's no special circumstances. You're going to take a vacation day or you're going to take a sick day. They're seeing some attrition from that. But if you can bring people back to the office and you can either do it hybrid, even a Friday or a Monday, or you can allow your person to be human still, I think that's where we're seeing the success right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I know our team for my business, we're entirely remote, and we run a just flex schedule. Like we'll have team members who are on at 5 o'clock in the morning and they work, half a shift there, they're off in the afternoon and work in the evening again, or, that flexes back and forth. Take a Friday off and work a half day on a Saturday. Like, that flexibility is nice, as long as it doesn't impact, client meetings or deadlines or any of that type of stuff.
And
I think that's
it
the
does
biggest
need to be managed.
expectation.
And people, owners and principals ask me that all the time. How do we deal with it? Well, you are going to have to manage it. I mean, it has to be managed. It has to be recorded, and so you can see what trends 6 months. If this person's always at home, or there's always special circumstances. It does have to be managed, but I think it can be managed.
Yeah. So, do you guys see, like, what are some of the specific trends in both HR and or staffing that you guys see local businesses should pay attention to right now, or things over the next 6 to 12 months?
I'm gonna jump in with AI, because if you're not paying attention, you're gonna lose some things. And I think businesses need to be aware of AI impacting people's ability to put together literally the most perfect resume ever in the world, as well as a LinkedIn. So having some tools to, kind of get through that. Everybody now has an incredibly powerful computer in their pocket, right? Where we didn't have that 20 years ago, right? It was a resume, a reference letter, everything else, and you had to do things traditionally. Now, a 21-year-old could write literally the most incredible resume with 2 years experience. So I just think paying attention to the technology and going back to, not going backwards, but going to more the human element side will help alleviate that. Have a meeting with someone. Don't just take a phone call. I mean, we're paying attention to it because people are using AI to answer questions on a technical basis. That's scary to me. Like, I mean, if you go to Joe's Plumbing, let me just break it right down for a Santa Clarita business, Joe's Plumbing Company, and if he gets on the phone and is talking to the owner who's been doing it for 30 years and knows everything about plumbing, and there's AI in the, earpiece answering all the questions, he's going to sound like an absolute rock star. When can you start? Can you start on Monday at 9? Well, that's going to be a total disaster if that's been, someone who's been an apprentice for 6 months, but is really technically adapted doing that, or the local accounting company that's just looking for someone, or the local admin. So pay attention to it. It can be used. So I think if you just take some human steps about meeting the person and having conversations just like this, You really get a sense that, someone's not using AI. And Jen, I'm not pointing out your earphones, by the way. I'm just saying having that conversation really prevents that from being an issue. So, and I mean that as a smaller business, because they have so much more to risk with each individual hire can be critical to their smaller company.
Yeah, and it happens more
Yeah.
often than not, actually. And I wish somebody was feeding me answers in my AirPods right now, but they're not. The trend in HR, especially in Santa Clarita right now, is compliancy, which is my superpower in HR. I love to come into companies and get into their books and make sure that onboarding is right and offboarding is right. And we're doing evaluations. And I-9s right now is the biggest with ICE coming into companies, obviously. I am going to tell you that I have not been to a company yet where they've had perfect I-9s. So that is it. That's usually a monster of a project for me, but that's a trend right now, is just making sure that with everything coming out in laws and, in California, we have so many HR and employment laws that the trend here in Santa Clarita, people call me and can you just get me compliant? Let's go. Let's get into my books. And those I-9s are really important right now.
Touching on the AI element for a second, I will say I saw a thing on Reddit. This was probably 9 months ago, where a guy was taking job descriptions, putting them in size 1 font in white text at the bottom of his resume. And so he'd take the whole job description and then stick it at the bottom, because his resume then matched 100% with the job description. And so he went on Indeed or something that was using, I don't know what platform it was. He went on one of the job listing sites that was using AI to help match people. And he would upload and apply for 100 jobs. And he had like a 98% acceptance rate to interviews. And he'd get on the interview and the person's like, "Oh, do you know about such and such?" He's like, "No stinking clue." And they'd actually pull up his resume and they're like, "Wait, you have a degree in this field, like you have a degree in, accounting, and you're applying for a physicist job, and how did this resume even come up? Like, we don't even understand how it came up in the system." And that's where Chevy, when AI chat first came out, like Chevy stuck a chat widget on the bottom right of their website, and like no filtering, you could just have it do whatever the heck you wanted. And that's where tools and technology is really helpful. But when we're doing things such as looking at 100 people and which one to hire, like, we still need a human involved. Now you can still have a stack of resumes and be like, which one did such and such again? And great, like, it helps filter through that a little bit, but there still needs to be some human involved.
Yeah, it just to add on to your point too, not only being able to do that, because I've heard not only that story, but it happening in my industry. The other concern that you have is when you rely on technology as a disruptor to stack rank candidates, the person who builds that technology of stack ranking those candidates, you're going to get the top 10 people that all went to the same school.
I love you,
talk the same
Andrew.
way,
I was
look
hoping you
the
were going
same
to talk
way,
about
come
diversity.
from the same background, everything else. So when it comes to like, okay, well, hey, I want to create this culture, right? And you don't want to look around the room and have everybody look the exact same and talk the exact same, and everybody wants to go to Chipotle at 11:30.
Same education.
Right? Same education, same for fraternity and sororities. Maybe take that technology and use it, absolutely, but also take the time to look at all of the resumes, because you might be missing that gem in the rough that's going to solve a problem or take that culture to the next level where no one wants to leave, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's the danger of the AI, of using these large ATS systems, that it just becomes a production model. And then you get trapped in this, well, why are we all thinking this way?
Yep.
Yeah, 100%. I I think it was one of the late night shows that did a trial run of one of those, and they just took a bunch of resumes from a company, put them through it, and then what it does is they pull in a list of all the employees, their roles, their education, all their CVs for the current positions, and then they say, now go find me someone. Well, in one of the departments, like there was like 3 people in the department who all their first name was John, and they all went to the same school. And so its criteria for that role is you have to be named John and you have to have gone to this school. And that was the criteria that the AI figured out meant the candidate qualified for that role. And so it's like,
Yeah.
it didn't care about the degree. It just cared about the school and the first name.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there's obviously flaws. But like you said, it can be helpful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, wait, for
So-
example, we go out and we search, and I'll just give you a prime example. We will come across a resume that is 5 years old or has a 6-year gap. And so AI, and I love technology, we use it, but we'll take the time to reach out to that person 5 years. And it could be, as Jen mentioned, reentry, right? An amazing human being that we would never get to unless we picked up the phone and called. Like, hold on a second, you were a project manager at Viacom and Sony for 12 years, and there's a 5-year gap, and you're an admin assistant right now. What's going on? So AI is going to skip over that resume right away. We'll take the time to call an email, set up a call, meet them, be like, oh, I took, 5 years off for whatever, take care of my parents. It could be any human story. And then you realize, what am I dealing with here? I'm dealing with an amazing human being. And then you start that process. Well, AI and technology is going to skip that person right away. They're not even going to be considered.
Yeah. They took off 5 years to take care of a parent or take care of a child. And then that admin assistant was their way to get back into the workforce and just get back into something. But to AI, it looks like their skill set has dropped off and they don't know what they're doing anymore. But
Correct.
yeah,
But
that's crazy.
You're sitting on a 12-year project manager who's done some of the biggest releases of movies we've ever seen, blockbusters, and, has dealt with the biggest executives. Might be a good fit for a local company looking for an office manager. Just saying.
Yeah. So looking at the Human Element Company, obviously you guys focus heavily on a people first solution. Looking at, Santa Clarita businesses who are struggling to hire and retain top talent, what are tips or strategies that you guys would recommend for them?
I'm going to take this one. So it goes against our business, but not really. I would suggest identifying really what it is that they need for the company, for that organization. Once you have that, go out and post it on your LinkedIn and ask your friends and family who they know. Start there. Then you post it on the job. All the job boards, you can get lucky there, but you also have, today when you go on LinkedIn, if you post a job on LinkedIn, easy apply, you're going to get 100 applications in 10 minutes. And out of those 100, let's just say 70 had no business even applying. If you interview 30, there might be 5 that you want to speak to, 3 ghost you, and you're down to 2, and they may not be a fit. So my advice would be to clearly identify what you're looking for, then put it out into the world in the social media, ask friends and family, everyone that you know, Chamber of Commerce, everybody that you know. You might get lucky with a nephew, and niece, or recent graduate to get it. And then obviously, if you are struggling with that, I know a really good staffing company that's human focused that you would reach out to. And I mean that because a lot of my clients will finally say to me, Andrew, I knew I was going to call you, but I wanted to see if I could find it myself. I'm done. Like after 10 interviews, I've wasted now 10 hours of my work week as a owner of the company, and I can't find the person. Can you please pre-screen the candidate so when I get someone, I know they're going to fit for the commute, for the salary, and for the culture.
Well, and I'll speak to that slightly just from my experience. Like, so I've run a digital agency. I have a staff of 8, and over the years we've hired all different people. And when COVID first hit, I was looking for outbound sales, and I get on an interview with this person, and they go, "Yeah, I just don't like talking to people. I'm like, wait a second, you're looking for an outbound sales role and you don't want to talk to anybody like during your day. I'm like, do you understand the job you're applying for? And a few years ago, we were looking to hire someone as well, and we were getting people who had zero experience, who were looking for like mid six figures on the pay scale, and I was like, what? Like, what do you even like? You have no experience. You've never done anything in the industry. You're looking to get your feet wet, and you're hoping to get $400,000 a year. Like, okay. I went through so many interviews. I got so fed up with it. I just said, I threw the towel in. I was like, forget it. I'm just not dealing with this. And I ended up, I'm in an agency mastermind group, and somebody in the agency group was like, hey, talk to this talent acquisition company. And I was like, I'm not looking to pay a company a ton of money to do that. And when I actually sat down and had the conversation with them, they're like, oh, this is what we're going to charge you. And I was like, oh, okay. I've already wasted, like you said, I think I did like 20 something interviews, and I was just burnt out and done. And so we did 3 interviews with 3 candidates. And at the end of the call, they were like, okay, what are your thoughts? And they set them up like back to back to back. And so I was on the call for all of like 45 minutes or an hour or something. And at the end of it, I was like, so I have to pick one? Like, I'm not sure I can, because they're all like, and so that for me, they knew where to go. They already had talent pools lined up. They know who to have conversations with. And I was like, yeah, okay. But it was very much a shift. And it's hard because as a business owner, oftentimes you're like, yeah, I can do this. I've done this before. I've hired someone, like I can do it again, but I don't want to spend 20 hours doing it.
And not only that, if your candidate pool isn't necessarily the best candidate pool, and then you end up hiring somebody because, like you said, you're left with 2 that you didn't think either one were a great fit, but you've already spent so much time on it. Then the HR piece comes in, like the onboarding and the training and the amount of money you spend, and then maybe it won't work out, and then you have to do it all again. That's the danger of it, for sure. Not getting the right person in the right role.
So I have a couple.
Yeah, we hired.
Go ahead, Josh.
Go for it.
I have a couple questions, and then unfortunately I got to bounce. It's been a great conversation. So one is, do you do targeted searches? What they sometimes refer to pejoratively, but I would embrace the term, is headhunting. And if so, are there some rules of the road where it's you don't break certain rules so that it's not a party foul, business foul? So do you do some of those targeted searches especially for those senior roles?
So absolutely, yes. It's probably one of our superpowers is to go out and get that executive level. So when it comes to our organization, there are 0 rules till it hits an agreement with us, i.e., if you are a client of our organization, Human Element Company, we would never pull someone from our existing client to put into a place, even if it meant huge career growth and a huge opportunity for us. That's just an absolute no-no, because you burn your reputation. Now, when it comes to us headhunting directly from any client, if they're not a signed client of us, wide open, fair game. And I've had CEOs call me and threaten me about trying to take their team members. And I said, hey, listen, I appreciate that, but you may want to meet me in person before you do that. And you listed your entire executive staff online with all of their praise about how amazing they are with their contact information as an FYI. So if your expectations were that a recruiter like myself aren't going to contact Jane and John Doe because they're so amazing, maybe you want to take, that's the risk reward of putting up your team online of how amazing they are, is that you're basically advertising to agencies such as mine that, hey, Jane and John Doe are absolute rock stars. And by the way, here's their contact information.
So Jennifer, I would imagine too that you would you would embrace that meeting as well, because sometimes when you're recruiting someone, they might say, yeah, I've really excelled here and I feel like I've contributed a lot to the company, but every day I walk in and I get screamed at by my direct supervisor and I just hate coming to work, or there's some other prevailing reason that they're leaving their options open. So is that what you've? I would imagine that you could provide some feedback to that company and be a valuable resource to the company that you're
100%.
actually recruiting from.
And like I said, that's the difference, that the consultant versus the fractional piece, that I get to know the employees and I get to know what drives them. And so when we have those workforce meetings, we're able, the principals or the owners and myself are able to talk about strategy and succession plan. Never have we recruited out of one of my clients for Andrew's clients. It actually hasn't even come up. I would never. I haven't even thought about it until right now. But I don't think of the people that I work with, all the employees, as candidates. They are extraordinary humans I get to work with every day, and I am there to help them on their journey. And when they are either terminated or terminate their own employment, I have never, ever been like, well, I know this great staffing agency now if you need to, speak to somebody. That's not, I think I just wear such a different hat. It's a great question. Yeah. I just have such a different hat on that I don't even think that way. So it hasn't come up. But I also, like I said, am dealing with all these companies with fabulous culture. So they want to know if their employees aren't happy and what we can do to make them happy. And if there is no growth, there's that honesty when you look at pay bands and you look at succession and promotion, and the people who have great culture can tell you, there is no more growth for you here. So you have a spot here, but, we understand if you need to go seek other places. And I just, like I said, I have it's a privilege to work with these amazing owners. So that's never come up actually, which is the irony of it, is I work with so many people who are coming and going out of jobs, but no, it hasn't intersected yet.
That's awesome. Well, I've got one other question, and then unfortunately I got to scoot here, but I'm curious about negotiations. In my experience, whether I'm hiring someone or advising other companies in their hiring practices, or advising young people or just colleagues of mine that are looking for that next chapter in their careers, I've noticed that the best matches, the best hires that we've made for one of our companies, or when I'm consulting another company, the money often comes up last. But when we do, and it's because, to your point, Jennifer, it's always about other things. Who are the people? Who would I be working with? What kinds of projects would be coming in? What level of quality are you devoted to on each project that comes in? How do you achieve that level? What are the processes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Culture, obviously. And then last is the best matches is when, the money sort of figures, there's a narrow band within which the money kind of makes sense. But I'm curious about the negotiation style that you tend to advocate for more. There's a couple general styles. I'm oversimplifying here. One is you identify a person's market range based on their industry, based on their job, based on their experience, based on their how much of a profit center they are versus how much of a cost center they are. And you can usually put that, maybe not an exact number, but within a range. And then you start talking to your candidate as well as your client on that range. There's another style where, and a lot of folks, I think, make this mistake where they say, well, I really want 100. So I'm going to ask for 150 and hope that we end up somewhere around 120 and maybe get a little bit more. And then the company might say, oh, well, they're worth 100, so we're going to offer 75, and hopefully maybe we'll end up at 90. And they do this used car salesman. Nothing against used car salesman, but that's the dance that they do. Which style, or is there some other style that I'm not articulating here that you tend to advocate for?
So Andrew's the negotiator. I fall in love with companies, and so I'm not good at it. Andrew says I give away the farm half the time. But what I'm going to tell you from an HR standpoint is that if you have over 15 employees in the state of California, you've got a pay band and you've got to advertise that. So there is only a range that you can be within if you're following, as far as that job title goes. Now, can they bring you in as a manager, and then Andrew negotiates and they change the title to a director and they change the pay band? That's very complex and usually doesn't happen. But as far as the techniques, so that's the compliancy piece of it from my HR. But as far as the technique, Andrew can definitely speak on that, not me.
So, Corey, I agree with you. Sorry, Jen. I agree with you. The two styles, the latter style you described of making it organic and starting at this number and meeting in the middle, I do not recommend. You're going to lose talent. You're going to frustrate your management team. You're going to frustrate your culture of that. I think it's really important, as Jen does a great job with her clients, and I try to do with my clients, is establish what that position is and what the salary range is that is acceptable for that company and for that position. Once that's established, now you have the range. What we do on our side is we establish that range with the candidate on the front end. It may not be the first thing we talk about. It might be the commute, might be the culture and the salary, but it's going to be in the top 3, and we're going to know that. And we're going to know the full-time salary range, and we're also going to know the contract range, because if a client flips the script and says, hey, actually, let's try a contract to hire in this position, we've already discussed that with them. So having that upfront conversation is critical to get that together. As Jen says, companies aren't supposed to hide it and play this cat and mouse game. And if they're doing that, the candidates that we work with are probably going to get out of the interview real quick, because they're not going to want that. People like transparency when it comes to salary. And I always tell clients, if they come back and say, well, listen, Andrew, your Jane Doe asked for 120 and we can't get there. It's 100K. There's a way to cut that cake 5 different ways, between onboarding, maybe a quarterly, a yearly, targets to hit, bonuses, things like that. You don't have to get to that way, but you get to an overall package. Again, leading to more of that, shoring up that amazing culture. Like, hey, we know you're worth 120. Our salary band is 100K because it's going to really mess up the team. We want to keep stability with the team. But if you can hit these quarterly targets for the year, there is this band that we're going to get you to north of 120. The team's happy. Everybody's happy because it's a competitive environment, but all the salaries are similar. But that rock star is able to get to what they earn. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm all about equal fair play, right? But in a championship series, there's only one trophy, right? And so those leaders and top performers are going to outperform other people. But the team is not out of whack because they're all in the same band, right? And not everybody, I always tell everybody, there's 3 types of people. There are climbers, there are campers, and there are quitters. Not everybody has to summit, right? But it takes a whole village to get that one person to the top, right? It's base camp 1, base camp 2, base camp 3, and then summit. Well, it takes an entire team to get there. And if one person summits, that's awesome. It's a reflection of the entire team. It just because you're a base camp 3 setting up operations and safety protocols doesn't diminish you from taking the summit of whatever mountain or whatever organization goal you're trying to get.
And many employees want to be at base camp 3. I talk to a lot, and a lot are like, I love what I'm doing. I don't want anything more. You need you need everybody.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. Camper. So climbers, campers, and quitters. I like that. That's great.
Right. And there's nothing wrong. Like, you could get to a certain, trust me, if you ever do a sport that's at high elevation, the most fit human being you've ever met, if they get elevation sickness, it's over. They're quitting. I don't care if they run triathlons all the time. If their system doesn't do well at 14,000 feet elevation, they got to get back down. Period, the end, no matter how strong they are.
That's awesome. Well, with that, I have to scoot. I have to go to 80,000 Leagues Under the Sea or something like that. I don't know. Whatever story Joshua makes up for me. But it was great talking to you guys, and I hope I see you. There's an event tomorrow night, so hopefully we'll
be
hook
there
up then and talk some more.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
We'll be there.
All right.
We'll put a face to a name, Corey.
Thanks so much, Joshua. See you soon.
See you, Corey. Awesome. Well, so I want to, wrap things up here as we're, sort of ending out our conversation. But what would you guys say is some of the most important habits or mindsets that you feel like has contributed to your guys' career success?
That's a great question.
Can I jump on this one first, Jen?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have a mantra, and the mantra is never quit, never give up. Because you're going to fail a lot. You're going to have so much obstacles and things to overcome and challenges that you're not in control of. And the psyche is you'll get overwhelmed, right? And it's like, oh, I'm not going to be able to do this. Like, there's no way I could get this done. Like, I'm totally drowning. I'm not going to do it. So I always say people don't quit, never give up. you don't eat an elephant at one sitting. It's one little small bite at a time. So if you start your day, it's like, okay, what can I accomplish today? This minute, this hour, this afternoon, this evening, this day, this month, this year, and take it in small bites. It's less overwhelming. That would be my advice.
I should probably take that advice, shouldn't I, Andrew? I tend to eat a lot at one sitting in business. I think for me with HR and really adoring all the people that I work with, including the companies and the employees. At the beginning, I was emotionally invested. And I think I've had to protect my sanity. And I think I'm getting better at it. I don't turn it off completely, but I'm able to quiet the noise. So if there's something happening with an employee and an employer, or, I mean, you know the drill, when you work with hundreds and thousands of employees, they're humans. Everybody has a story, and there's going to be something that comes up at some point with them, and I'm usually involved. I need to protect my sanity, and so I'm able to quiet it a little bit after hours now. It's not silenced, but and don't ask me how I do that, because I'm not sure how. It's just a skill that I've recently been able to hone in on, and I'm not sure if it was like the 2025 or just that business is crazy and I had to protect my sanity. And I don't know that this would apply to everybody in small business, but for me, I've needed to protect my sanity as a business owner, and quiet the noise behind me and really focus on what's important.
Yeah. I can see that. Definitely with you know the business side a little bit as well, and what's coming down the pipe and who's struggling as an employee. And oh man, yeah, definitely not the position that's to have very sensitive emotions. It's not for the faint
of heart, let me tell you. And when you really, really adore all the companies and people equally. But I think that's part of that superpower that I talked about, compliancy, but also empathy and care for everybody, all the employees and the employers. I want everybody to flourish and be happy.
Yeah. And I think, there's so many lessons to be learned through all of that. And I look at some of the different lessons that like I've learned in business is oftentimes coming from like some of those major losses or missteps. I'm curious, like, have you guys seen elements that you're like, well, that was a dumb move on the business part or career part or whatever? Like, definitely glad it happened because we're here now, but would definitely not go that route again. Is there anything for you guys?
Andrew, you want to take that?
You guys have seen?
I'm the perfectionist, so we have different opinions on this.
COVID was probably the biggest eye opener, because our organization was breaking records and doing so phenomenally well and on this trajectory, and then to not be prepared and to watch all of our clients in unison, like a switchboard in a high suspense movie, all turn off, all within 30 days, and just completely shut down, was really an eye opener. How we truly are intrinsically tied in this business community, whether you're a small business, a medium, or an enterprise. And the big guys are too big to fail. That's out the window, because we've all experienced Enron. So that was the biggest eye opener for me. I did a lot more on the enterprise side than I did on the local side. And so the lesson I learned from that is Joe's plumbing company is as important as Google, because of that fact, is that you don't know when Joe's plumbing supply is going to become the national supplier to whatever, and they're going to remember that relationship. where Google is much more likely to shut off that valve as a vendor because there is not that HR Jennifer commitment of building the relationship. So that to me was a real eye opener for me. Jennifer really helped me with that because she has that unique ability to look at people as an individual rather than as a big, impressive organization. Where kind of the companies that I've worked with in the past, you get a little impressed walking on these big campuses in San Francisco and New York City and Rockefeller. You get impressed by that, and then you realize, well, no, it's actually the people behind it. It's the humans that are the disruptors. So that's the biggest thing that I've learned. Probably failing and then rebuilding is to see everyone and look at them holistically as a human rather than who are you with.
Yeah, and
Or who do you
to add on to that, from what I see, and I'm not necessarily speaking about a misstep on my or Andrew's or Human Element's part, but the biggest misstep I see from companies is when relationships go sour in companies, and then how the employee is treated on the way out. I mean, whether you're working them out or whether you're firing them immediately or whatever it is. If you treat that employee like crap, they are going to turn around after they're gone and you are going to pay for it and you're going to be treated like crap. So be very careful how you treat humans because it will come back. You reap what you sow, and everybody deserves a fair and I'm not going to say fair. That's not fair because you have definitely terminations that have to happen, but they are still humans on their way out. And needed to be treated as such. And I do believe that if you are kind to every employee, whether they're your star or whether they're on their way out and leaving, and how you exit them. And Andrew and I have seen this time and time again. When you exit an employee poorly, there is going to be some sort of suit or some sort of something coming back your way. So that's that from where I sit is the biggest misstep a company makes, is the exit.
Yeah. I will say so I run a marketing agency, and when we have a company come in, a new prospect, I will oftentimes Google search the company. What is their Google reviews, Yelp reviews? What does all this look like? And there's been a few times where I've seen a Glassdoor page and there has been 7, 8, 9 employee reviews that are just leadership constantly changes their mind. It's demeaning. It's like, and I'm like, yeah, do I want to be a contractor working with this company? Probably not. Like, if that's how they're treating the inside, in-house employees, like, yeah, it's probably not a relationship I want to have.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. So. And whether it shows up on Glassdoor, whether it shows up in a courtroom,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Exits are very important. And that's definitely key takeaways. Don't ever minimize an exit.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I appreciate both your guys' time today. As we sort of close things out, is there anything that we want to leave listeners with? I will say, like, in the show notes, I'll have your guys' LinkedIn for both of you personally, and then also for the company. We'll have the website. But is there anything else, that you guys want people to know about you guys?
Yeah, I just to reiterate Jen's point of exiting, offboarding an individual. I think it's really important for companies to know that they have tools in their basket to do that gracefully if they choose so. One, being kind to humans, having someone or a department like Jen who can offboard that person with compassion and treat them well and help them with their, next step, their benefits. But also this is a plug for Human Element Company. We actually do outplacement, and we've done it for many, many years at the highest level to executives down to ground floor employees, to help companies have those companies, if they are part of a RIF or a layoff, to do that with grace and compassion for their employees. It's a small investment, but as you mentioned, like the Glassdoor, that would reduce that almost completely. If you make that small investment, if you can, that really helps. So I don't think people ever want to think about having to do a layoff or a RIF. But when it comes to them, I want companies to know that there are tools to help them with that.
Yeah, Andrew has a great program where he goes into huge companies and he educates people who haven't been, haven't needed to find a job in 10, 15, 20. These are huge executives who have no idea, or, entry level that was last hired, first fired. And Andrew goes in and educates those that are being laid off. And it's he goes into the room. It's kind of like what I was saying earlier with HR is like, oh my God, HR's in the room and nobody likes you. And Andrew walks in the room and they're, what's this guy doing here? And they're just, they're just checking a box that they need to check. And by the time Andrew's done his half day or day seminar, he's linked in with all of them. He's trying to help them. They reach out to Andrew with, for guidance. So that's definitely a great part of our company that we don't talk about that part of it much because it's not very positive, but it is a great part of the company.
Yeah, well, and I think the opposite side of the way to handle a layoff. I have a friend who was laid off, and he woke up in the morning and he went to log in on his laptop, and he was like, that's weird. My password's not working. And about a half hour later, he got an email saying you have a meeting this morning with HR, and he was like, yeah. So he drove into the office and he walked in. They're like, yeah, you're fired.
Yeah. Got that a little backwards. Turn it off.
That is like the worst.
Yeah,
that is the worst case scenario. At least they met with them and didn't do it via text or an email.
We've seen that
so
too.
I'll give them that, but that is just, you don't have to do it that way. You really don't.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It's and hearing companies that do Zoom webinars with 300 employees and put them all on Zoom and be like, okay, by the way, heads up, everybody on this call is gone. It's just, good God.
Yeah, that's where Andrew really does those outplacements is with companies like that, unfortunately. But
and the element, Andrew, that you were just talking about is coming in to a business like that, providing a half day or a full day seminar or whatever on that, helping people beef up their revenue, their resumes, helping them do all of that. Potentially, you guys might be a resource for them to find their next job. And if not, then maybe you can help point them in the right direction and whatever that might look like. But that employee is now like, okay, well, I'm not here anymore, but my employer did help to the next, to help me find my next employment, which, looking back at a Glassdoor page, if there's a business with 2.5 stars on Glassdoor, I'm sorry, but nobody's applying for those jobs that has, good talent, that has, the number of applicants they see is going to be much, much less. Yeah. So, it's one of those things where, we see in the marketing space. There's a business recently that we saw that was 1.5 stars on Yelp and Google. And they're just I don't know why our Google ads aren't converting. And I was like, I know why your Google ads aren't converting. Anybody Google searches your business name and thank you.
Yeah.
That's what's coming up.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, for those who are listening, if you run a business and are looking to hire or fire or retain your staff, reach out to the Human Element Company, and it'd be good to connect with them. And they'll be at local chamber events as of recording. We've got one tomorrow night.
Yep, the mixer tomorrow
there's
night.
An event. So, yep. This will air after that, but
there's a mixer every month.
Yeah. So. Every month. Yeah, exactly. And the other one that I've been talking about on the past few episodes is the Chamber Expo. The Chamber Expo
that's
is
a
coming
great
up
one.
later
We'll
this
be
year.
there.
Yep.
And Andrew chairs the small business. Andrew
well.
doesn't chair it. Andrew's on the committee for the Small Business Council, and I chair influencers. So we're really active in the chamber. It's an outstanding tool to Santa Clarita.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%. 100%. Yeah. I was just talking with Di Thompson on the last episode, and we were talking about the influencer stuff.
Yeah.
So awesome. Well, as always, for those listening, please follow, rate, and review us wherever you get your podcast. You can find us at The Voices of Business on social media. I am Joshua Maddux on LinkedIn and other socials as well. You can find Corey at Corey S. Nathan. We'd love to have you as a local business owner on the show if you're a chamber member. So reach out. And thanks for listening. We'll see you next time on The Voices of Business.